there's only one thing lower than a politician in the perception of the public of this country, and that's a journalist. Our commentator today is both a freelance journalist and commentator and a former politician, former Labor Party member for Casey, Peter Steedman. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Neil. Well, some years ago when I was a federal member of parliament, I was quoted in an interview as saying that in the perceptions of the society, that politicians were regarded as lower than whores, with no disrespect meant to the ladies of the night. Nothing's changed in the last 7 years, except perhaps that this dislike and distrust has increased. There's nothing new for Australia, a country that's traditionally had an anti-authority ethos and a distrust of those who wield power. The dislike may have come from a convict background, but the distrust was certainly created by the antics of our first politicians in the state colonial governments. In Victoria alone, during the 1890s, those property franchise paragons of the society were up to their necks in corruption, the classic story being that of Tommy Bent, who was commissioner for the railways, had the tracks put through his private property, thereby allowing subdivision, vast profits and the establishment of the suburb of Brighton. While he was rightly condemned and politically dead after that, the vagaries of Victorian politics was such that within 6 years he was back as Premier in a parliament in which every upper house member and most of the lower house members were involved in some sort of shady land deals. Today, in times of growing unemployment, massive debt and total lack of ideology from all major political parties, the preoccupation with both the parliaments and the press is over who will inherit the poisoned chalice and when. The Hawke-Keating scenario is being gleefully pursued by a bloodthirsty pack of hounds, as you'd ever find, excusing their simplistic and lemming-like activities on the grounds that these are issues of national importance. The rerun of the Howard Peacock debacle, this time in the Labor camp, gives the discredited media the light and colour it needs to further assist in the trivialisation of our political system and contribute to the aforementioned national cynicism of our politicians and their motives. But the media couldn't get away with this unless our politicians played into their hands, and the incestuous relationship between those in power and those watching and reporting combines to ensure the real issues of import are not debated in the political arena. A recent example of this in the state was the glee that followed Jeff Kennett's surprising resurrection and the hype that continued for over a week, as Jeff led the media along with a new piece of circus every day, only when he went overboard and the full implications of exactly what his ideas could do to the political stability of our system sunk into the minds of the journalistic voyeurs did the warning bells sound. Now we have the spectre of a man who was given the leadership by a bankrupt party with the aim of causing a constitutional crisis more invisible than the man he ousted, Alan Brown. Back in Canberra, the fairies at the bottom of the garden have gotten out of control and turned like spiteful children on their leader, managing to publicly degrade her by flaunting her sexual activities before the nation while claiming that it was irrelevant. If that was so, why did they bother? Any cursory glance through the ranks of the federal parliament will reveal a trail of failed marriages, one very real byproduct of a system that carries people away from their families to an artificially created capital that lacks soul and compassion. All of these factors, the lack of ideology, the lack of politics, the multitude of parliaments, the opportunism of politicians, the bloodlust of the press, continue to alienate the Australian public at a time when we are long overdue for constitutional change, when the world economy and political systems are changing on a daily basis, and when there is an urgent need for far-sighted visionaries to put new concepts and policies into the political arena. They say we get the politicians we deserve, and I couldn't agree more. While the public does not seem to care who or what rules the country, when they don't pressure their elected representatives to fulfil their roles as servants of the people, and while all issues are trivialised by a lazy media as simplistic issues of leadership, it's not all that easy to place all of the blame on the politicians.
We've got to go at everybody.
Well, I should think so. I thought that's what I was invited in for.
Why do politicians always have a go at the media?
Why do the media always have a go at the politicians?
Because they're the representatives of the people.
That's right, but the media think they're the representatives of the people often. I've seen, look, Neil, let's not play games. You and I know a whole lot of media heroes who get right up themselves and consider that they are the people who make the changes of the government. They are the people who will decide what the people want to know. They believe, some of them, that they're that they are actually the government in exile, and that is not the role, as you and I both know, of a journalist.
We'll take some calls in a moment. 88785000. Your views on politicians. Is Pete Steedman right? If I got through the auto queue. I've never done that. If the system is as bad as you say, why do you stay in it?
Well,
you're even trying to run for the Senate recently.
I want to change. Well, that was another story we can go into if you wanted, but no, because I want to change it. I mean, I've spent all my life trying to change the system. I mean, you know that. Wherever I go, I seem to sort of cause some discontent. I don't accept the system. I never accepted it. I want to change it. I've been doing it for a lot of years and I haven't had a lot of success, so I think that I'm probably a failure as a politician and as a journalist or as someone trying to change the world.
Oh, terrific. We'll take some calls now. Margaret, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'd like to say for one, that I'd like to stand for federal parliament the next, or 93, whatever it is. I agree with Pete Steedman, but I believe that the party system is a lot to blame.
Well, which party would you stand for if you're
Neither now. I'm going to stand as an independent. I have tried Liberal. I've read a lot on Labor, and I believe that Liberals now got nowhere to go because Labor's kind of stuck where they used to be.
But it's the way the system works, Pete, isn't it? Well, the independents cannot have really a significant input, even though we've got one on the floor now.
They're having more at the moment because there's a disillusionment with the political system, but they won't have a real influence because of the system works. We have a system that is a hybrid of the American federal system and the English Westminster system, and under that, the parties will exist, and the party that rules will make the Prime Minister. But what I'm suggesting is we're running up to the constitutional issues. See, we've got real important issues coming up at the moment. Our constitution needs changing, but while the politicians degrade the system, while the conservatism is in the electorate as a whole, we won't make the necessary changes. That constitution was put together by, for want of a better word, a group of businessmen in the late 1800s to serve their own interests.
Right. Graham is the next caller. Good afternoon, Graham.
During an election, why do politicians promise everything and we finally get nothing?
Well, they're basically liars, aren't they?
Well, I don't know if they're liars. They're trying to get elected, basically, Graham. I think that's the reason. If they came out to you and said, you know, the country's destroyed, we've got no policies, we don't know where we're going, but please let me back into Parliament because I need another term so I can get my superannuation, you wouldn't vote for them.
Did you ever tell me lies when you were running a campaign?
I don't think so. I mean,
you're not sure, though?
Well, no, I cannot recall ever telling a lie, but I didn't necessarily answer questions that were put to me.
The dreadful media was pursuing you, trying to make you answer.
No, but I mean, there are things like that. If you say things like, and you're a part of the government, you know, is it true that the thing's going to... I mean, Graham Richardson, is it true there is going to be a run against Paul Keating? No. And then the next day saying, yes, well, of course, I knew about it. Now, I suppose... Well, I mean, he answered it. I would have put a bag over my head and run away.
Do you wonder that people don't trust politicians and don't like them?
No, it's not. But again, I think it's got a lot to do with the education. People don't understand the political system nor politics. Nothing has changed since time immemorial, except in our country, when you lose government, you don't end up against a wall and get shot. And that happens still in many countries around the world.
Well, look, we could fill an hour, but you've talked too much. Thanks for coming in.
Oh, we could?
Yeah.
Is that all?
Pete Steedman.
Thank you very much, Neil.
Thanks a lot, Pete Steedman. In a moment, Lee Matthews and family, the day after. You're watching Mitchell on Sunday, live talkback television.